Welcome to the Refined Strength podcast, Miss Meghan Page. How
Hello.
are you?
I am great. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm super excited to have you here. Just because you're someone who I've seen and known kind of just like through seeing for a long time, and then like over the last year just seeing you at shows more and getting to know you more. Like you're just a dope person and you have so much like wisdom and like just insight into the world of not just bodybuilding but into the world of like self mastery and alignment that I'm excited to dive into, because that's kind of where that's a big part of what I have been so interested in my own journey and in like the journey of my clients. So my first question is just, who are you? How would you describe who you are?
Oh man.
Tell the world.
Well, thank you for the wonderful introduction. I so appreciate all of that. That means a lot to me to see that you are resonating with those pieces of me when we spend time together. Because you're right, I've been on that journey myself quite a bit in the last few years of alignment. So, my name's Meghan Page. I am a creative. I am a ball of energy. I'm a total oddball. I'm a weirdo. Like I'm a little bit offbeat. I'm into very metaphysical stuff. I'm very into energy. I'm into tarot, have been since high school. So if you need a reading, you let me know.
I like how you mentioned that. Like, I have been since high school. Like, it's not like just a trendy thing recently. It's like
No.
I'm into it.
Oh, I've been in it for a minute. It's embedded.
Yeah.
It's not going anywhere. So I'm definitely all of those things. I'm a dubstep enthusiast. So that's how I describe myself, I guess, in general. But what I do is I'm in that creative aspect. I'm a photographer. Actually, my first business I started was a photography business. And I am a bodybuilding coach. I'm a founder and creator of Team Flex Appeal, which I started a few years ago and didn't even if you understood my background coming from such a creative theater, choir, like all of the creative background aspects, no one would have ever guessed that I would have been an athlete or a coach.
Same girl.
It's out of left field for sure. But I am a bodybuilding coach. I'm a posing coach as well, and I can say with full confidence that I am a bodybuilder. I think that's kind of a controversial topic. People want to say, have this convoluted idea of like how you identify as either you're a bodybuilder or you body build, right? And like, what does that mean? But I can say that I think I am a bodybuilder. So much of my time and energy and focus goes into bodybuilding. So that's me in a nutshell. Oh, and I'm an IFBB Figure Pro.
Oh, and that.
Never would have guessed. Again, left field, but that's me in a nutshell.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how so how old are you? Are you 30?
35.
35. Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's old. Yes.
Wow, she's old. Yeah, no, I'm 31, so I think of myself as, it's funny, what I used to think of 30 and like past 30, maybe like 5 years ago, is nowhere near where what I actually feel like. Like I still feel like I feel better than I felt at 25. You know what I mean? Like I feel younger than I felt at 25. What do you think? Like, how do you feel in terms of like your age?
Totally agree. The older I get, the more I realize I don't know and I don't understand, and how much more I recognize that there is to learn and take in and grow from. And so I do feel, I think even in the last few years, especially going through such a transitional time, it's made me realize how young I still am and how much more I still have to learn. So the challenging part, I guess, is running up against our own biology. Eventually, I do want to have a family. And so I'm like, okay, like our clock is ticking if we want to make that a reality.
Yeah, that's where like the reality comes back to you. Like you might feel like mentally or even physically younger, but then you realize like, oh, there's also this other part of aging that's like, might prevent you from having that family. And so you do have to keep that in the back of your mind at least.
Right. Yeah, it has to be a consideration for sure. I mean, but thank goodness for modern medicine, I guess. So we'll just
you're
like
healthy,
take it 1 year.
you're doing good. Yeah.
We got it.
Yeah, I think with how we feel in terms of our age goes, like the people that focus so much on like, well, I'm this age, so this is how life is, or like, oh, I'm getting older, so I'm accepting of this, this part of my body, or my body's slowing down or whatever. And also like in terms of what we have to learn and know about and figure out about life. I think the people that are like that remain like they're confident that they just know everything and they have it all figured out, or that they will have it all figured out by a certain point. Those are the people that probably feel older and feel like there's this like rush to figure it all out by a certain time. Like, I need to be here by the time I'm 30, or by the time I'm 35. Whereas when you're not in as much of a rush to check those boxes off, you're probably going to enjoy your life more. And if you're enjoying your life more and you're having fun with it and playing and like being in touch with just like the present moment, you probably feel and not act, but like feel a lot younger than you really are just overall.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think that plays so much into you, like who you allow to be in the driver's seat of your own life, right? As I've seen some people age, get older, they allow time to be in the driver's seat, and they kind of allow that to take away ownership from their own agency. And I think we experience that a lot from a young age, when we're expected to have a career in mind and set out for us by the time that we get out of high school. We have to have all these pieces in place, start a family by this certain time. Like, everything goes in a specific order. And if you don't, then you feel behind, and then you start to worry, and then you start to put that ownership of your own life in external things, which guilty, did that for most of my life. But I think it's really taking your own ownership back and taking your own power back that allows you to continue to stay young and active. It's all about that mindset and how you go into everything that you do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about like my mom had my sister, who's 7 years older than me. She had her at 22.
Yeah.
And like, I cannot imagine myself at 22 taking care of a child.
Yeah. Wild. Like, yeah. My mom was 27 when she had me. I'm like, I cannot imagine having a 9-year-old right now. No.
Or if I think of like, the people that are teaching now, like teachers, right? When we were kids, we looked up to our teachers as they were this like authority that like know everything. And they're like the source of knowledge and like the biggest authority in our lives outside of our parents. But like, those teachers we're like 24.
Yeah.
Right? Like, some of them are older, obviously, but like, I remember having quite a few teachers who were like in their early to mid 20s, and like, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, like in life.
Yeah. I have no idea.
The dynamic.
Totally. Oh my gosh, you're so right. I didn't even think about and realize that, because I mean, we put ourselves back in that position and we're like, wow, realizing what we know now and how much more clarity and like just peace maybe, or about everything that's going on around us. Like, man, when I was 24, my priorities were so different. So different. Yeah. I mean, actually that 24 is about when I decided to step into bodybuilding. So it's like, it's an interesting time to look at that little microcosm of space and like realize how immature we were.
Yeah. And just like totally different person we were. And I think that really only comes from having a relentless pursuit of just being better than you were yesterday. And it doesn't mean trying to be better doesn't mean that we aren't great now. It just means that like, there's more to uncover and there's more to discover about ourselves, and we won't know until we try, right? Yes. So talk about how that kind of transition from where you were before, more of that creative style only, and then getting into bodybuilding. You talk about how that's like no one would have ever guessed. I also come from a theater background, as we found out this year, like we have that in common. Like I went to a performing arts high school. I went to performing arts college to get my BFA, dropped out to go act professionally and sing and dance professionally for a while, until I figured out like, oh, I really like fitness and maybe I want to compete. And that's kind of how I found it. So how did you find that about yourself?
Yeah, it's wild that we have so many parallels in our life. I just think that's incredible. I love it. Also super jealous that you got to do all of that at a younger age. Like, that was my dream. Like, that is all I wanted to do. So kudos for you for doing that. That's amazing. We'll have to talk more about that. I found bodybuilding out of necessity. I treated myself very poorly. I guess, looking back, I recognize how much of my life was spent in survival mode, um, from a very, very young age, like childhood, and had to cope with very adult things at a very young age. So it made me grow up really fast, but it also, I had no tools. I was kind of stuck and frozen in that coping, to get through life. Like, and I was really white knuckling life. And so I made decisions about, my career, about what to study in school, not for myself, but because of the hope of what other people would think about what I was doing. And I don't know if I would call myself an alcoholic in college, but oof, it was close. Like, it was not
If you
cute.
depend on alcohol for anything, you might as well call yourself that, even if it's just
Man,
for fun.
yeah, seriously. I mean, socially accepted alcoholism was a thing. I mean, and growing up in Idaho, like, you didn't do a lot besides spend time outside or drink.
Yeah.
So I was very much so in that loop for a very long time. And I moved away from Moscow, Idaho, after I graduated college. And I saw a coworker, um, go through her first contest prep. I had no idea that bodybuilding was like I didn't had no idea what bodybuilding was. I knew who Arnold Schwarzenegger was, but I didn't know anything else. But I saw how much what I didn't realize, I guess, at the time, is that she had structure and she had focus. And I didn't have any of those things. And I also hated myself. I was also so, like, I lacked so much confidence and ownership in my own life. And so I didn't realize what I was getting into when I started, but I saw what she went through. And I was like, I need that. I need to do that. So I moved to Seattle shortly after that. And
What
eight
made
months
you
out,
decide on Seattle?
Seattle was big enough and far enough away from home, but not
It's
too
still
far.
kind of close. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, what's the closest, like, reach? And then I mean, just so many serendipitous things kind of came into play that allowed me to step into Seattle, transferring with work, being
And
able
what
to
were you
house
doing
it.
at the time, work-wise?
I was running a sales team, like retail sales team at Nordstrom.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So I was in retail sales for a long time, and transitioned over, and I signed up for Emerald Cup 8 months out. I like September, I picked up my first dumbbell. I was like, I'm going to try this. I got a trainer. I signed up for the show and I was like, I'm going to go all in and learn. So it was trial by fire for sure. So that's how I found bodybuilding. And I never stopped. I couldn't after that first show.
What about the first show made you like fall in love with it?
I, I think I realized how much more control I had over my life than I thought I did. And
Mhm.
just by making simple choices to lean in to myself, even though it was really surface level at first, starting this self discovery, self ownership piece, um, small things like daily tasks and routine started to make me feel better. And then I was able to make more clear decisions for myself. And I felt like I was making better choices for my overall life. And I think that first time on stage, I mean, it gave me that theater aspect, which I know, like the
Yeah.
performative thing, which I loved. But it was the first time I felt like myself in my own body.
Yeah.
And even though I placed last at that show, I did horrible. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a coach. Like, I like looked everything up online. It was not cute.
What
It
was
was,
your online like what was your main online resource as someone who was self-coached back then? That was like when was that? 2015?
yeah, 2015 Emerald Cup 2015 was my first show. So I
I
started
literally
training.
just guessed that. I don't know how I guessed that.
Nice, crushed
That
it,
was my
crushed.
first year competing too. So, yeah.
Yes, see so many synchronicities. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I think it was just honestly Google search. I don't even remember if I got into Reddit that much, if it was even really a thing at that point.
I don't think
Oh my,
Reddit was as much of a thing, but I know bodybuilding.com had a lot of
yes,
forums
yes.
and like diets, right? I think that was like probably the first diet I tried to follow on my own was like probably like Ashley Horner's diet on bodybuilding.com
Yes,
or
totally.
like Paige Hathaway's diet or something like that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. There was a book too that went through different IFBB pros, like diets and program, like weight training programs
Okay.
too. So I bought that book on Amazon and I read it, and clearly like that's what the pros are doing. That's not what
Yeah.
I needed to be doing, but it gave me an idea of like what they were including in their meal prep, like what I should be leaning into. And then I also started to get a few friends at the gym, and I met a couple people through Save Fitness, which was like a small
Oh
bodybuilding
yeah, Save
community.
Fitness.
Yeah. Oh
Candy
yeah.
Johnson. Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah. So I learned how to pose. I started meeting some people that way, and then I started kind of picking up what other people were doing,
Hmm.
and starting to play around with those elements. So yeah, it was game over after that first one. I was like, the way I describe it is standing on stage that first time is like being in an airplane with no windows going a million miles an hour and trying to catch your breath. Like that's how it
Yeah.
felt. And
Yeah.
I that adrenaline rush, I was like, ooh, yes, more of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here we are 10 years later, and now I can't stop.
Yeah, it's crazy. I felt the same way. It was like I had a terrible prep. I did have a coach, but it was like my boyfriend at the time.
Mhm.
And he had, now looking back, I'm pretty sure he had never gotten anybody on stage or put himself on stage at that point. He just
Sure.
like was jacked and like knew kind of what he was doing, knew more than me, and that was all I needed.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and like
10%
told
more.
me that he could prep me. So we did that.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, I felt the same thing. It's like I knew that I hadn't done truly my best because like I cheated on my diet a few times in that prep. There were like, remember
Yeah.
one time I ate an entire box of Quest bars in a single day. Uh
Been there.
like I
Been there.
made some mistakes
Yes.
and definitely obviously didn't have the proper guidance, but it was that feeling of just like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like I, for me, it was, I had loved performing in like the theater and dance aspect, but part of what was tough for me was that like I had already gone through like acting professionally at like and making a living as an actor
Wow.
and realized that it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. Like I realized like I do like being comfortable and having money, and acting just as a career is just like it doesn't lend to that very easily. Not that I wanted things to be easy, but it was like so much of your success as an actor and creative in general is about who you know and luck of the draw. Maybe the director at your audition is hungry, so he doesn't look at you and he doesn't pay attention to your audition, but he pays
Right.
attention to the person that he knows already. You know, there's
Yeah.
so much that has nothing to do with your actual work ethic,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
bodybuilding was something that it's like, no, you know how hard I worked because like nobody looks like this, right? It's very, very small amount of people can actually get to this point.
Right.
Whether you win or place last is like you're still like you still went through this big transformation and you get to like showcase that. There's a performative aspect,
Yeah.
and there's like that relentless pursuit that you can take part in and just like get better and better. Even the best in the world are trying to get better. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a beautiful part. I mean, I think that's something that a lot of us bodybuilders, at least people who continue with it, we're kind of forced into this constant evolution, right?
Mhm.
Because we're always, it's like you're in this space where you're constantly forced to better yourself in order to continue progressing. And you want that, you crave that. So when you do that physically, that starts to pattern in so many other things that you do in your life, the way that you think, the
Mhm.
way that you address, the way that you communicate with people, how you think about yourself. Like it's just, it's so, everything is so intertwined. And so it's really cool to see so many people in the bodybuilding space, I think, adopt this evolutionary process as just part of our everyday life because it's ingrained in us, which I think is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, and I think there's unfortunately a lot of people who don't see how that really connects to
Mhm.
everything else in life. You know, there's the people that like put all of their identity into bodybuilding
Yeah.
and everything in their life revolves around bodybuilding. So it's like they have this evolutionary process, but they're so obsessive about it. Really everything goes into bodybuilding, so much
Yeah.
so that they're like they're not showing up at work as well as they could, or you know they quit their day job to become a bodybuilder,
Yeah.
or they only work kind of a shitty part-time job just so they can like still have as much work and as much time spent as in bodybuilding as possible, and they don't think about, well, what comes after bodybuilding,
Right.
because no one's actually making money from just competing.
Right.
You make money as a bodybuilder, career bodybuilder, whatever, through like yeah, sponsorships and stuff like that, but through things that are complemented by your bodybuilding. Like for us, it's coaching, but like we could quit bodybuilding competing tomorrow and still be successful coaches. So they're connected, but they're not like exclusive to
Yeah,
each other.
totally. Well, and they're
Um,
so different. There's honestly coaching and bodybuilding, and they are so different. Like because it's one thing to be so intertwined with what's going on internally and be able to interpret and adapt your own process, but being able to listen to feedback from and biofeedback from your clients, adapt your own process to their body and their challenge, and like dial them in a very specific way. I mean, we're so many things. We wear so many hats as coaches, but it is so different.
Yeah. And it's like, a lot of people who compete, they end up kind of thinking about coaching and they don't really think about that stuff. It's like, you can't just do what you've always done and make sure, and someone is successful because of that. Like sometimes you'll get that and you get lucky with
Yeah.
a just very responsive athlete, but then there's also the people that are harder to crack and
Yeah.
the cases that are harder to manage and the people that just don't have the drive that you do. So what do you do with them? You
Yeah.
either let them go and, I guess they just don't want it bad enough, or you have to, as the coach, figure it out with them. And that's one of my favorite parts of coaching athletes, both lifestyle and competitive, is just like the watching someone start to just take form and watching someone's world change, while like partially due to you, but also due to them really wanting that change, right?
Yeah. Yes. I think that's what makes a good coach. And maybe that's why we've become the coaches that we have become. I mean, what I've gathered, I've obviously never coached with you, but like gathering what the way that you work with your clients and the way that you think about things, the questions that we ask our team, I think you start to really quickly tell what the motivation and the drive is for a coach to be a coach. Like, I wish that I would have learned that earlier in my own experience as an athlete, and like being able to detect that
Yeah.
from
So you
coaches.
can choose a good coach for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, because there are a lot of people who just get lucky
Mm-hmm.
often. They
Yeah.
pick the right pieces to get lucky often, and they
Mm-hmm.
promote that heavily, those people that got lucky or the genetic anomalies. And it's like, well, what about how do they feel after they get out of that contest prep? Like, how are they evolving? Are you going to be able to replicate that when their body and their physiology is different at a different level?
Mm-hmm.
Like, good luck. We'll see, but
Yeah.
it's interesting to like be on this side of the coin now, as a coach, and realize how many rides I got taken for as an early athlete.
Yeah. I mean, like that's how we learn and we become better for our athletes, but also for ourselves. And it's also how we learn to like ask better questions of our coach now. For
Yes.
those of you that don't know, me and Megan have the same coach, Mark Tominic.
Yes, we do.
Um,
What up,
you
Mark?
signed up with Mark when?
May 4th. May the 4th be with you,
May the
baby.
4th be with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so you signed up in May of this year and you got your pro card, was it last year? Right?
Yeah. USA is 2023.
USA's. Okay.
Yeah.
So I know you took some time between getting your pro card and hiring a coach. You worked with your old coach for a little bit and then kind of self-coached and did a lot of had a lot of healing and like evolution in that time too. Your divorce got finalized, right? Like lots of big
Yeah.
steps. You moved to a new place. So talk about that, just like how you have gotten to the place you're at now where you feel so just like aligned and like ready to take on the next level and the next level. Because I know when you first got your pro card, you kind of had like a feeling of being a little lost, right? And you
Yeah.
weren't really sure what direction and like how you were really going to get here. But now that you're here, talk about that.
Yeah. That's a great question. A lot that goes into it. If I can streamline it as best as possible. I think there were a lot of pieces rolled into preparing me for what was to come, preparing me for this year in general. At the beginning of the year, I guess the best way to kick it off, the thing that really sparked a lot of change for me is on New Year's Day, I had my first panic attack. It came out of nowhere. I was walking on the street after New Year's and a firework went off and I blacked out for 20 or 30 minutes. So it was a sign to me that there was a lot going on underneath of the surface that I wasn't addressing, that I wasn't correcting, and that I needed. It was like it was a full stop. My body was like, no, enough. And I know why I got to that position, that overdrive. I was in the midst of my divorce, as you mentioned, and it still hadn't been finalized at that point. It had been going on for about 3 years. And I had been, when that happened, when I got divorced, I was living in San Diego. And I moved back up to Seattle because I had a couple friends that lived here. And I literally slept on a couch until I could figure out what I wanted to do. Through that phase, I was in complete survival mode because I didn't have very much income with my photography business. Moving cities, like trying to get a new clientele up here was really tough. So I was like really grasping at straws and figuring out, where was I going to live? How was I going to eat? How was I going to train? Like everything was kind of up in the air. And I lost everyone in that transition. There were a lot of family members I ended up going no contact with. I lost my support system with my friends. I lost my
Because
partner.
of the divorce and the move,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. And just so many things that wrapped into it. And it created a really beautiful opportunity for me to reinvent myself without any explanation to anyone else around me. And I realized that I needed to completely cleanse, but that was kind of overwhelming at the same time. So I was really starting to pick up the pieces of myself and decide what I wanted to step forward with. And I'd been trying to like figure out what to do with my business and how to get photography going. But then at the same time, I had this great opportunity to step into coaching. So I was also
this was 2018.
This is 2021.
Okay, 21, right?
Yeah, 2021. And so I kind of started all of these pieces all at the same time. And so I was frantically trying to white knuckle everything to like, okay, survive, like eat, where are you going to live? Can you keep shelter over your head? Like go, 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 go. And so I'd been pushing really hard with that on prep on top of it as well.
What a great time to prep.
I know, amazing, right? Amazing. But man, that was the one thing that kept me going. And I was so on in that prep too. I was like, this is my continuity. This is my consistency. This is going to keep me grounded. And it helped me keep the blinders on and keep focused and moving forward. And prep was beautiful in so many ways because it allowed me to have a process to replicate in what I was doing with my business. You know, the structure that we have with contest prep, I was like, let me take all of those pieces and replicate that in how I'm doing my business so I can get my coaching business off the ground. That's the only reason why I was able to get my coaching business up and running to support me enough to restart my life. So all of that being said, I was just in this huge space of go, 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 go. And finally my body said, no, stop. What you're doing isn't working anymore. The way that you're coping isn't working anymore. You need to slow down. And so I took a couple months at the beginning of the year to go back to therapy because I hadn't been back to therapy in a little while. And I started to ask myself more intuitive questions about who I am and how I want to operate, how I want to build relationships moving forward. What am I allowing? What boundaries am I not holding for myself? And it forced me to get a lot more clear about my vision and a lot more refined in the way that I operated on a daily basis. And so knowing that I needed to quiet my mind and I needed to get out of survival mode and I needed to pull the way I acted in survival mode out of how I prepped for bodybuilding shows, how I trained, how I operated at all in relationships. I needed to be more at peace. And so anything that wasn't a resounding yes after that point was a no, was an absolute no. And I just started cutting things that weren't serving me out. And at that point, I had chosen to sign up with Mark. So I came in to working with him with a very open mind and ready to ask myself a lot of hard questions and ready to push my own envelope because I knew the way that I was trying to control everything around me wasn't working. So I was ready for new input And he definitely gave me that.
Yeah, he does that. He does do that. It's funny. Me and him just recorded yesterday, and
Oh,
I talked to him. I said the same thing about how I started with him. Is like I had also been at that point of like I white knuckled my way through this prep in 2021, and my prep in 2021 was not beautiful. It was pretty ugly. I got last place again over and over again.
okay.
I had the kind of heartbreaking moment of realizing like my coach just isn't it anymore for me. He might be for someone else. He's not for me.
Yeah.
And even knowing that, I stayed with him for 2 more shows, and it was just one of those things. I kept feeling like I was on the cusp of something, and I had to do something, like, compete again and do this show and do this move to Texas in the way that I did it.
Yeah.
So it was an ugly year, but it was transformative because it was so ugly. And
Yeah.
I also realized that, like, wow, I am trying to control so much that I
Yeah.
am either not meant to control or I'm not equipped to control. And I think most of it was like, I'm not equipped to control as much as I'm trying to do because, like, I haven't made it there yet. It was my first year coaching full time, and I was with another company. So it was like, I was comfortable enough in myself as a coach, but I still felt like this like, lack of accountability to really like become the level of coach I wanted to. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome too, because I had just like lost at these shows. I'm like, man, what if people stop believing in me as a coach because I'm not a very good athlete?
Damn.
And realizing that I had also felt so like I had prided myself on being this hands-off athlete, like that kind of does my own thing and like didn't need a lot from my coach. But then what I came to realize, like, that's the problem. I'm trying to do something that I've never done before, and he's never done before either. So
Yeah.
why do I think that that's gonna work? you know?
Sure.
Um, and so yeah, I definitely relate to that, and just being that you need to let go of that control in order to regain some control of over
Yeah.
your life and just like over your destiny. And so I guess my question now following up is like, what made you believe that you could get farther to the next level of yourself, through after such a hard few years? What made you believe that you had it in you to become who you are now?
I think I've always known. I think I've always known that I have something great within me. And
Mm.
I didn't know what form that was going to take, but I knew what I did know is that the way that I was trying to go about it wasn't it. And that white knuckling stuff or trying to control the how had gotten me very far. It got me a pro card.
Mm.
But did I
Yeah.
look the way that I wanted to look? No. Did I make as much progress in that year between USAs as I wanted to? Not even close. Like, not even close. um, I just knew that I had tried and exhausted a lot of my own options of
Mhm.
how I felt like that needed to come to fruition. And so at this point, I mean, in coming into this year, I was like, fuck it. Like, whatever way the universe wants to give me this, I just need to make room for the magic. I need to just let
Yeah.
things happen the way that they're going to happen. I need to control my thoughts more than anything else because I know I can control all my meal prep. I know I no questions asked that box is going to get checked, like all the action items. But if I can't control and regulate my own mind and just say, why not more often, then I'm never going to tap into all of the opportunity that's around me that I can't see.
Yeah. Were you ever did that were you met with kind of disappointment in yourself that, like, wow, I can't control as much as, or I can't do this as well as I thought I was doing it?
Oh,
Or were you
yeah.
like
100%. Like,
yeah.
full, like, wow, Megan, wow. Like, you really don't have it all together like you think you do. Okay. Like, reality check moment for sure. And I regressed a lot. I mean, I guess I maybe regressed is the wrong word, but I really turned into myself a lot in the first few months. I like completely shut down from the outside world. I went off social media. Like I was in a hole for a minute because I was like full existential crisis of what are we doing? Who are you? And what are you trying to prove to yourself? And what kind of life do you want? Like, you know, you want something more. Well, you know, you want this. Why are you not letting yourself have it? Because you're trying to control A, B, C, D. Like,
Yeah.
that's not going to do it. So I've really learned so much more about myself in the last few years. Yet again, why in the world do we feel equipped to make decisions at 24 if we can't have like a full identity crisis and like emerge from the other side? It's funny. I just realized this too. When I moved back to Seattle in 2021, I kind of my phrase that I kept kind of leaning into was metamorphosis, my transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize of how much of a theme that would be throughout the next few years. But I feel like I'm finally starting to really step onto the other side of that, where I've brought some of the pieces together. And it's beautiful. It's so beautiful to let go. It's so hard to let go, but everything is so much more clear. And
yeah, I think when we have trouble letting go, it's because we think that, well, if I let go, I no longer have the control over my outcomes, or I no longer have vision of what's to come, or I maybe lose sight. People think that it's like almost like irresponsible to
right.
let go because you're losing sight of you. They think they're losing sight of the goal. You know,
Yeah.
I think about clients who are really resistant to taking more time off between shows, or just time off before a diet phase, just to build their metabolism or build up focus on their health or something like that. And they think that they think that by trying to rush or to just like get to the next step instead of just like being at peace in the maintenance, or being at peace in a health phase that's not sexy and not fun, not exciting, and they get FOMO from not competing,
Yeah.
is like what you're really doing when you're doing that. Like you're not getting to the outcome that you want and you desire faster. You're actually putting it off.
Yeah.
And you think that by controlling everything and being like, no, coach, I'm going to do this. Let's go. I don't care about the reverse diet. I don't care about the off season or how much time it takes to build or whatever it is they're trying to do. Like what you're really doing is probably setting yourself up for more failure than you ever would have had if you had just like taken the time to take the off season and take the health phase and whatnot. And I think that's something that I see both new and seasoned competitors, people who have competed a lot, fall victim to, is they're so focused on controlling their timeline that they don't allow for another perspective or another person to change their perspective on what it really means to become undeniable compared to your last season, or become undeniable for the first time. And that's why, people are hesitant to take more time to grow or pull out of a prep when something is really glaring and pulling you out of that prep. And it's because they're identifying so much with like being in it and being like, I'm going after this thing. And if I'm not, then I'm failing. Or if I'm not, then I'm being lazy or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's like, what's the why? Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it important now? Why? Like, really, what's the really deep, honest truth behind that driving force? Because when you skip all those phases, you skip the lessons, you skip the growth that you get. Like I know we've talked about this before, but man, the longer that you're in an off season, the more you find new levels of confidence within yourself, of ability within yourself. Like it almost, not only does it like reset your body fat percentage, like set point, right? Like not only are you working it down, but on top of that, you get more confident and more comfortable being curvy. And like, why can't you let yourself reset that standard a little bit to get healthy about your own perspective of your own body, for one example, right? Then trying to rush through it and keep yourself lean, keep yourself small. Oh, that word small, which
or
we
stay
do a lot.
relevant on stage. Like that's another thing I'll hear is like people like, I just need to get back on stage so I can make the progress and I can show up and I can like, I just need one more show or one more, season and then I'll be there. Like, but if you haven't made any changes physically, then you're not like, you don't need just this one or this one more. You actually needed the time off. And I love what you said about the confidence thing, because I totally agree. And it's one of those things you don't really know until until you experience it. And
Yeah.
I think that, I know for me, one thing that I've found a lot of, like gotten a lot of feedback on as I've finished off my prep, and it has been going as well as it has.
Yeah, just casually going well.
Casually got third place next to two Olympians, whatever.
So stoked for you. So well deserved.
But like, one of the biggest things I've noticed that it's really cool that I really hoped for that would show and like my clients and other people would see it is like, wow, that off season really did make a difference. Like that she took 2.5 years off from not just competing, but from being in a deficit. Took 2.5 years off from doing cardio. I didn't do cardio at all during that time.
Damn. Lucky.
Yeah. Like, I kept waiting for him to add cardio in a health phase, like between cycles or something like that. But no, he never did. He never dropped my calories, not once. Not to say that he doesn't do that for other people. Like, everyone's different. But that was one of those things where I was like, no, this really is what I needed. I needed to get to that level of discomfort and just having that unknown too. Because I definitely had periods of that, especially kind of leading up to prep, just being very like, wow, I don't know how I'm going to look. I don't know how this season is going to go. Like, this could go so many ways. And like, I've taken so much time off. I almost felt like a new competitor. And that was kind of a cool sensation. And too, since I had stepped off stage in 2021, like, so much of my life and my circle around me has been different.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people that I know and I'm close with now that I wasn't back then, they thought this was my pro debut season.
Yes.
And I kind of joked here and there about it being like pro debut 2.0, because it's like my first two pro seasons were so just like lackluster, and I obviously didn't do well. But like, yeah, most people thought that this was my pro debut. And I think even like an announcer used that at the first show.
No. You're like, yes, reintroduction. Like, this is the new version. So ignore the rest.
Yeah. And like, so the feedback I got was that just like that, how valuable that off season really is. And like, not only have I been like trying to beat that down people's throats, like, yeah, your off season's important. But now it's like, I'm walking the walk. And like the transformation from last show to this show only happened because of that. Yeah. And it also only happened because during that time, I wasn't fixated on just being a bodybuilder. I wasn't like waking up every single day thinking about getting third place at this show. I was waking up every day just trying to have the best day I could and be the best person I could and working as hard as I can. Like, as long as I can do that, then I'm doing a good job. It doesn't matter what's going to happen when I start prep or when I end prep. Doesn't matter the placing. Just matters that I'm doing my best. And if I can do my best today, and just like I did yesterday, then it's all going to add up. It's going to compound. So it's like, I think of the off season and the work that you can do and the mindset that you can build as like a high yield savings account, right? Like, it's an account that you put into, and if you can put into it regularly, that's great. And it's going to compound over time. That like, that money makes you more money. And so you might not see that. You're not going to see that money, like, it's not in your pocket, but it's in that account. And so like, for me and for you and for anyone in an off season, that's what you're putting into. You're going to be able to withdraw so much more money and so much more value when you are on stage and you see those pictures and you see that density and the confidence and the quality of your muscle and the ability to like get as lean as you need to get and do all of the things. All of those things work better. The prep will be so much easier and like more predictable if you set yourself up for success by investing enough into it.
Yes. 100%. Preach it. Honestly, I I wish more people could adopt it. I mean, I guess you don't know until you're here. You
Yeah.
don't know until you're in it, experiencing it, how valuable it is.
Yeah.
Because I mean, we've both done a myriad of different types of growth phases, right? I think that maybe I'm stepping into something similar to what you stepped out of coming into this prep. A very long off season. I have no idea when I'm going to step on stage next, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Honestly don't care. I'm just excited I know the next time I step on stage, it's going to be insanity. I'm going to make waves the next time that I do, but I'm so happy being here right now.
Mhm.
And I didn't know that a growth phase could feel like this. I didn't know, like, I can honestly say that I've never had a real growth phase before until this
Yeah.
growth phase.
Talk
It's
about that. How is
completely
that
different.
definition changed for you?
Yeah, I think it's just the realization of the capability that I have within my body. There were a lot of things that were glazed over in my other off seasons that really would have made the biggest difference, and that's what I'm starting to discover now. I I was not training the way that I needed to be training in the past. I didn't have a coach that would look at my training videos. I knew that I needed support with training because I held a lot of fear around the gym.
Mhm. Why
I
do you why do you think you've held fear around that? Just having been bodybuilding for a while, why were you still holding fear in that?
Yeah, that's a great question. This is a new discovery for me too, which I was kind of like gagged about. I was like,
Yeah,
what?
it's
Okay.
cool.
What's happening? But there was two different aspects. The first one was really around my lower body training. I had an injury in 2018, 8 weeks out from Emerald Cup. I tore my calf, doing something stupid, like high knees, when it was outside and cold, and my calf just went. And I couldn't train lower body the way I wanted to going into that show. And I think that was part of it, like this fear of injury. I'd feel a twinge
Mm.
or discomfort. But the reality was, I was just, my hips have been really misaligned for a long time. So like going in and getting body work done more regularly, getting chiro done more regularly, I'm starting to actually feel more alignment within my body physically. And so I'm able to connect more effectively. So that was a part of it that I needed to go into. I needed to invest in my own well-being in order to uncover some discomfort that I was having that was holding me back. But I there was also this element, and I'm going to go kind of deep on you for a minute. There was this element of unworthiness, honestly,
Mhm.
that was hovering over me and has been hovering over me for most of my life. And digging into like childhood trauma and like where all that abandonment and unworthiness comes from was spilling into the way that I was showing up. I didn't feel deserving of the progress. Some part of me didn't. There was part of me that didn't feel that I was allowed to want things greater than what I was given when I was growing up. And
So then that kind of transfers into like not feeling worthy enough of even just like the intensity in training or
yeah,
like the like pushing yourself in training, I bet.
yes, 100%. And also then there was also this element of it kind of combined with lack of confidence too in handling and managing really heavy weight, that I would usually train in higher rep and lighter weight, like higher volume. And
Mhm.
I wasn't training in these really, really heavy top sets. So what I started to recognize is I was being pushed by Mark with his training program, that I was leaving gas in the tank. My intensity wasn't there. And he just had to ask me a question because I'd already kind of opened this door of starting to uncover what was going on internally with me. So he just had to push. He had to say, why? Why are you not pushing? Why are you leaving something on the table? What's going on there? Why? And it just kicked the door open for me to recognize that when I'm in the middle of those top sets, my mind is chaotic. It was it was loud. I was disassociating from my body. I was frantic. I was concerned about the weight. I wasn't focused on what I was feeling in my body. So there was a phrase that I started to tell myself when I was in the top of these top sets, mostly for my lower body stuff, because I was having a hard time pushing lower body. I mean, I'm talking I could barely get a plate up on each side for a deadlift. Like I was really disconnected. I started just telling myself to stand up, push the floor away, just stand
Mhm.
up. Think about how it
Simplify it.
feels in your hamstrings. Contract. Yeah. and shut everything else out. And I started doing that, and like the weight just started packing on. Like I was able to flow, to move, and now I'm lifting 315, 325, 335. I'm like packing on more and more weight to every single time I go into the gym with ability and with good form and control. And I'm like, it's wild to recognize that the narrative that I was spinning up in my head had been holding me back from so many years. And I had coaches that were telling me it didn't matter how I trained, it didn't matter how I moved, just get in there and chase the pump. And it was so wrong. It was so wrong for me. And so just having Mark just like prod a little bit and be like, no, more, allowed me to give myself permission to push more. And that's why I've had so much progress in this one growth phase. Who knows how many more are to come. It has completely changed the way that I feel about my confidence in the gym, dispelling anxiety about beating the log. It's not about beating the log. It's knowing that I'm going to be able to adapt by the time I get into that next session, and just having the joy, like you mentioned, the allowing myself to just enjoy and stay curious about what I'm capable of next, like curious about what's going to come my way, and lean into it and accept it, and keep rolling with the punches. So it's the start of something really beautiful and like a very big alchemy of fear into something really progressive.
That's so cool. That's one of those things that's like, if anyone gets anything from this episode, it's just like, it's the fact that your thoughts hold you back, and like what's going on in here and in here is so in your head and in your heart is so wildly powerful, more than you think.
Yes.
Going from like barely being able to lift 135 to just like boom, a few weeks later 315, like that's insane.
Yeah.
And
It's
most,
wild.
I've seen the same thing in clients, especially people who like, are coming to bodybuilding later in their life. They're not in their early 20s, they're in their mid 30s or 40s even.
Yeah.
And, I see them do a video for the first time of a deadlift, and they're picking up one of those prefixed barbells,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing? and
Question.
they just, and it's because they don't feel worthy of anything heavier.
Yeah.
They are playing it safe. There's nothing wrong with being safe. Obviously we want to be safe, we want to like prevent injury, but like they truly do have that like sense of like, I don't do that. Like I would never do that. I would never pick up a barbell and put on a whole 45-pound plate. Like that's for someone else. That's for men. That's for, whatever it is that they think it's for. And so it's really cool hearing that from you, someone who's like, you're a fucking IFBB pro and you were scared to lift more than 135.
Yeah.
Like, no, a lot of people think that they put people like you or me like on this pedestal of like, oh, they're so strong, they have so much, going for them, they have it figured out. But like we talked about, it's like we're all just figuring it out, and we all have those self-limiting beliefs. I had this, honestly, a very similar experience too, even before I hired Mark, where I was, I also injured myself in 2018 and with a hip strain, and it was right after I turned pro. And I spent almost all of 2018 trying to rehab that. Yeah. And a lot of fear came in that had never been there before. And I had just kind of accepted the fact that like, I just can't train under crazy heavy loads. I don't deadlift because of this. And it took a long time to like take that fear away. And there's just like, we've talked about levels of everything. Like I reached a higher level in my like 2019 or 2020 when I decided like, all right, I'm done with that fear. I need someone to push me harder. So I hired a trainer for the first time to just like push me through workouts, and like started developing my own voice and like what I really knew I needed from that trainer. And while like now I don't need that, it was more, I felt like I needed a training partner, but there was no one that I knew that was a good training partner. So I was just like, I'm just going to hire a trainer, have him push me. And then like from there, reaching a new level just in like trusting myself to be stronger and to just continue to work through those little sticking points. And I feel like there's been so many of those things over the last few years, and especially with Mark and now with Austin, since we trained together.
Yeah.
Like Austin will regularly tell me like, why did you choose that weight? Like you can do more weight than that. And like, even if
Called
he's
out.
never seen me, yeah, even if he's never seen me do that weight, he's like, you can do that. You can do more than that.
Amazing.
Like
I
quit
love that.
sandbagging. And yeah, and it's like, it's one of the, it's just so so much more mental than we think it's going to be.
It is.
And that should be proof to someone listening who like is constantly thinking or wondering like, should I be making more progress? Like, I wonder if I'll ever make it. Well, if you're wondering and if you're thinking that, it's probably because you're leaving shit on the table.
Yes.
You're leaving work, you're leaving gas in the tank.
Yeah.
And I think that's like, you posted something recently that I really have been a big believer of, especially as I finished out this prep, is like, the reason we think about some things so much is because we already have them in the future.
Yes. Totally believe that. Absolutely.
Talk more about your belief behind that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big energy person, and I think letting go of control has helped me lean into this belief even more. But I believe that we know what's coming to us deep down within. We know what we're capable of. And that's why we have these levels of unrest, these levels of dissatisfaction, because we know our ability is greater than what we're really giving, or where we're at currently, or the people that we're surrounded with, or whatever. We feel that unsettled feeling because our body is trying to get us to, and our soul is trying to get us to our place. I'm going super metaphysical on you. Trying to get us to the place that we're meant to be. And
it's like a check engine light. It's like a sign like, hey, like, pay attention to me and do something about this.
Right here. Yes. Like, no more, no more. And you have to be intuitive. I think you have to be, your nervous system has to be regulated enough that you can pick up on those signals, that you can listen. That was my challenge for a long time. But I fully believe that everything is kind of predestined for us. Everything is already set out on the path ahead. What matters is that if you feel like you desire and you want, and you know that something is supposed to be yours, you feel like you want something so greatly, it's because it already is. Somewhere, I think time is totally a construct, and maybe, and things are happening simultaneously all at the same time. And you know that thing, that goal, that place that you're destined to be, that it's already yours. It's why you want it so badly. And you trying to control how you're going to get there is not going to help you. It's kind of like That's So Raven, right? She'd see the premonition in the future, and she would try and control everything to make sure it didn't happen, but her controlling it made it happen. And it's the same type of, like, everything is going to happen the way it's going to happen. So why don't you just like let go and enjoy the ride and listen to what your intuition is telling you of where you need to be? That's going to be your best guide. So stop fighting it and lean into it.
Yeah. I 100% believe that. And I think that like, it makes me think of that like invisible string theory, where we're like tethered to something or some person, and it, you may not get it right when you want it, or meet them right when, you'd hope to meet them. But that's why like making these like really strict 5-year plans and being this like checkbox person is like actually holding you back from the things you're meant for. Yes. And like, I used to be that person, like to a T. Like I had these check boxes that I wanted to hit. And now looking back, I don't even recognize that side of me because I'm so not that person anymore. But like, I wanted to be married by the time I was 25. And I felt like that was totally doable. And so like the first person that gave me just enough of the like attention and what I thought was love and the the security, whatever, that I felt like I needed to check that box off, I was like, yeah, sure, let's go it. Let's ignore all the red flags. Let's, this is fine. It'll get better because this is where I'm meant to be. Right. And same thing with like jobs, like looking back on, deciding to do, take different jobs and stay in different jobs and things like that, just for the sake of like, well, I I just got this raise, or if I do this, I'll get this bonus and this, you know, these benefits. And I would be crazy to leave that behind.
Yeah.
And then when I started realizing, like, I think that my divorce really in 2020 and just 2020 in general really started to like show me the fault in all of that.
Yeah.
Because, you know, 2020 happened, no one saw it coming, right? And so, especially in Seattle, if you know,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh,
Um,
God. Yeah. Seriously.
so
Dark times.
for me, it was like all of that stuff was just like thrown at me and shown to me, and I realized, like, wow, I don't have control over anything.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get married thinking I was going to get a divorce, but I did start to remember, and it was weird because these memories came back to me of things that I felt during the beginning of that relationship, and even in other things, like in my work and as a competitor, this happened too, of realizing, like, I did have second thoughts about that and I ignored them.
Yeah.
And, you know, then realizing, well, what if anytime I have that kind of like gut feeling, I listen to it?
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean I have to listen to it and accept it, because sometimes our gut is wrong, but like listening to it more intently and trying to figure out, like, asking ourselves more questions. And that's something I've found to be so helpful in just self-discovery, is asking more questions of ourselves
Yeah.
and really being honest and, like, sometimes ugly about what the answer is.
Yes.
Because the answer is not always going to be pretty. Sometimes, like, we really do need to be the better, bigger person. Sometimes we do need to change. It's not always the other person, right? And so for me, realizing, like, well, I didn't think I would get a divorce, but I definitely remember thinking that this is a red flag.
Yeah.
And so I need to listen to that more.
Yeah. I believe that. I do.
And then when I found Austin, and when I'd already been with Mark as my coach. And one cool thing we found out is that at the time I signed up with Mark as my coach, Austin had been following Mark as well, and had actually applied to be one of his coaches.
Oh,
that was
dang.
when Mark was hiring coaches.
Nice.
And so
Okay.
we had already been connected at some point, and he had already followed me on Instagram at that point, just as like a chick in bodybuilding that was cool, right?
Yeah.
Like, nothing. We were both in relationships. It was like, you know, he just followed me like you follow anybody.
Right. For the community. Yeah.
Yeah. And so we found that out, like, at some point in the last year, that timeline kind of matched up in that way. And then when we started, like, talking and hanging out, it was like there was all of these little connections that we've found, similar to like you and me. Like, we found all of these little alignments. And like, when you start to just be open and like let go of what you think the timeline should be, you start to actually realize, like, how much of the timeline is already predetermined.
It's already unfolded.
And it doesn't mean that, like, you know, you can, like, there's a certain event that's absolutely going to happen. It's that, like, everything leads to the next thing.
Yeah.
And if you're just open to change and open to just like the world doing the things that it's going to do, then I think it does give you more control over your happiness, because it allows you to see what you're capable of, and what the world around you and the people around you are capable of, in terms of just like finding the things that you love to do, and finding the people that are meant to be around you. And just, it's all, like you said earlier, it's like you have to learn how to protect your own energy, and like protect that energy of like the people around you. And like, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. Like, it doesn't need to be in your life, or that person doesn't need to be in your life. And you don't have to feel guilty about that, because nobody else really cares about your quality of life but you. And the people that are like really, really there for you, like, you know, your significant other, your partner in life, you know, your very best friends. But like, even those people, like, they're not as invested in you as you should be.
Yeah, 100%. And all of that can change at a moment's notice. I found that out. And I think it made me value relationships in a really positive way, and like value the people that come into my world. It made me a lot more choosy about the people that I give energy to. But what you went through, I think what you realize when you go through divorce maybe is that everything has to play out in the way that it does, right? If you hadn't have gone through that experience with your divorce, you wouldn't have had the intuition to second guess your gut maybe, or
Mhm.
you wouldn't have looked at the way that you interacted in that relationship, the way that you allowed things in. You wouldn't have been
Oh
able
yeah.
to reestablish your boundaries in the same way. And I totally get that. It's like everything happened because it was supposed to happen. Like
Mhm.
there are no
I was
mistakes.
supposed to learn that lesson.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
intentional. It was necessary for you to be where you need to be. And so I think accepting that also, that like nothing is a mistake, that everything is there for a purpose and an intention, and all the bullshit we go through and all the trials and the tests, it's all because we are meant for something more. And so the more that you are tested, the more that you choose to reflect on that and learn from it and grow from it, the better positioned you are to accept everything that's meant for you when it is time. So I believe
Yeah.
that wholeheartedly. And I think it's necessary to go through the shit to be a good person. I think
Mhm.
any good person, I think the best
Yeah.
people have gone through some really challenging stuff and have chosen to do something beautiful with it. So
Yeah. You
yeah,
can you can go through something really hard, whether it's a divorce, a loss, a sickness, whatever it is. You
yeah,
can go through something really hard, and the people that are going to be the most successful and the best people and have the best fullest life, they're the people that didn't choose to see that as something that took their world down,
yeah,
and made like they didn't choose to be a victim
yes,
of that circumstance. They chose to learn from it and grow from it, because those are your only two options.
yeah,
You can either have this failure happen, have this mistake, in front of you that you just made, or this thing that happened to you, and you can say like, oh my god, like everything is terrible and I just need to change everything that I'm doing, and everything is awful,
yeah,
and like this is why my life is like this is why it'll never get better. You can think that way,
yeah,
but what does that give you? What
yeah,
does that do for you? It Like being hard on yourself in that way doesn't actually move you forward. It just
right,
makes you feel bad for yourself.
yeah,
And but like if you chose to like use it and be like, what can this do for me? What can this help me with? Then no, it may not solve the problem. It's not going to cure the cancer. It's not going to take back the mistake or take back the failure, but it's at least going to move you forward to whatever your next level is. And
yes,
the next level might be a level down.
yeah.
But even if it is a level down, you can still get back up.
Yes. Yeah, like attracts like. You know, the energy that
Mhm.
you put out is the energy that you get, the frequency that you send out. So if you play
Yeah.
that victim frequency on repeat, then that's exactly who it's going to
You're going to
attract
keep
to your
that stuff
space.
is going to keep coming to you,
Oh yeah, I
unfortunately.
mean, I did that for a long time too. I think I kind of got on my soapbox about being mightier than thou when I like coped with so many things from my childhood, which I felt like I needed to be awarded for, you know? And so
Mhm.
that, like, I think in turn was me playing victim from a soapbox in my
Mhm.
own way when I was really young. But I had to do that to be like, ew, oh, don't like that. Let's
That's
change
not
that.
helping
Let's
me.
not
Yeah.
continue with that. Yeah. But it was, I did that for a little while until I was like,
Mhm.
"Ew, that doesn't feel right, and I don't want to be that person. Like, let's make a
Yeah.
different choice."
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you can live in the past, and it's like, yeah, it might help you initially get through that trauma or unpack that trauma instead of just bottling it up and leaving it to just fester inside of you.
Mhm.
Or you can like use it, allow it to help you, allow it to talk about it if you need to talk about it, but eventually you got to move on because it is in the past,
Yeah.
and it's not gonna help you much to continue talking about it or make sure everyone knows like, well, I'm the way I am because of this. It's like you're like, most people don't really care. They care more about who you are right now,
It's true.
and like who you are to them, and you, whatever you went through in the past and whatever mistakes or trials you've been through, like most people care more about who you are now,
Yeah.
and like who you are to them, where you're going, where you can go together. And they weren't a part of your past,
Yeah.
and even if they were, like, it's part of their past too, and
It's
they
true.
don't have your experience, they have their experience. And so the just living in that present moment and being more in touch with who you want to be and the type of day you want to have and the type of experience with life you want to have is
Yeah.
so much more powerful than just staying stuck in the muck of your past.
Yeah. Romanticize your life.
Mm-hmm.
Make everything special, because it is like, it's all about perspective and allowing yourself to like lean into the magic and like lean into the joy, and like making stupid stuff that's maybe not even that special for you, because you're like,
Yeah.
this is awesome. And you just affirm yourself and like how great you feel sipping your coffee. Like that can be something that's beautiful and changes that energy that you bring in. Because if you do,
Yeah.
if you ignore, if you try and push aside, if you try and bottle up, if you try and pretend that a challenge or a trauma or an issue is not an issue, then it comes through in your lifts and it starts to hold you back from all of the things that you want to do. It's like full circle moment, honestly. So like deal with it or pay the consequences in your mind and your physique.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like you can pretend like, this type of inner work and inner like dialogue with yourself and how you show up for yourself and for others. You can pretend like it doesn't matter and like I just need to check my boxes. I just need to eat my meals and go to the gym and do everything and just follow my plan. I just follow my plan. I don't need to think about who I am as a person. But what if you did?
Yeah.
Like think about what level you could reach that you don't even see right now because you're refusing to see who you really are and discover who you could be. Like you don't know and you think that it doesn't matter because you haven't even tried.
Yeah.
So try and see what happens.
Yeah. It'll get you 70% of the way there, right? I mean,
Exactly.
it will, but at the top, it's the 1% that matters. It's that
Yeah.
extra sauce. And like if you're not willing to self-reflect and figure out the ways that you're holding yourself back from that extra percentage that's going to give you an edge, then you'll never make it there. So you have to
Or
have
you'll be
all the tools.
forced there in an ugly way at some point, like with a panic attack, right?
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning. Happy 2024. Welcome. But
You
hey,
had some
let's
work
get
to
started.
do.
Yeah, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for that challenge. I'm grateful for marrying the wrong person. I mean, if I
Yeah.
wouldn't have done that, it's bizarre. Bizarre that I can say that at this point, because it's still so close, it's still so fresh within this
Right.
last year. But man, that was probably the best decision. It's the most life-changing decision that I ever made, was marrying the wrong
Mm-hmm.
person, because it forced me to look at everything through a lens and decide and
Yeah.
choose. And that's literally all it is. Everything that we do in life is a decision. And it's
Mm-hmm.
how you choose to reflect on it, how you choose to respond, how we choose to interpret and hold certain experiences that happen to us, how we choose to experience it and view it. It's all that. And so I don't think I would have been able to become the athlete that I am. I wouldn't be stepping into this new version of myself, letting go of so much, if it wasn't for that. So props to my ex, man.
Thanks, buddy. Never want to see you again, but thank you.
Appreciate you.
Yeah, I feel that. Well, I could keep talking about this stuff forever, but I gotta hit the gym. So
Get
thank
it.
you so much for being here and being you and sharing your story and your insight with listeners here. If anyone wants to get in touch with Meghan, she is an amazing coach, amazing person to follow. I'll have her information on her coaching and her photography in the show notes, and then follow her on Instagram as well.
Love it. Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to chat
Bye.
with you, and go crush that lift. So proud of you.
Yeah.
Excited to see everything that's to come for you. We got some good things brewing, so more to come. We'll have to do a
Oh yeah.
recap again in the future date, and like
Oh
all
yeah.
the new things that are coming our way.
I love it. All
Love
right.
it.
Thanks, bro.
Thanks. See ya.